I begged God to take it away. I don't just mean I asked politely. I mean I pleaded, I bargained, I fasted, I cried until I was physically sick of crying. And nothing happened. The thorn was still there, lodged deep in my life, this constant throbbing, painful reminder of my own weakness. It was a wound that would not close, a shadow that would not leave. I got to my breaking point, a place where the floor gives way and there's nothing left to stand on. And in that moment, I finally just screamed into the empty air, "Don't you care? After everything, don't you even care?" The silence that hit me back was deafening. It felt like an answer in itself, a cold, indifferent confirmation of my deepest fear, that I was utterly and completely alone in this. But what he said to me in that silence, not with an audible voice, but with a clarity that cut through all the noise in my soul, well, it didn't just change my situation, it changed me. For years, I lived with a thorn. And let's be honest, we all have one. It just wears a different costume for each of us. Maybe for you, the thorn is a chronic illness. It's the daily fatigue, the constant pain, the medical bills piling up, and the slow, draining loss of hope as you grieve the life you thought you'd have. It's the feeling of being trapped in a body that has betrayed you. Or maybe your thorn is that relentless, suffocating battle with anxiety or depression. It's the inner voice that tells you you're worthless, the gray filter that covers every beautiful day, the panic that comes out of nowhere and steals your breath. It's the exhausting effort it takes just to pretend you're okay, to put on a normal face for the world. Maybe it's a relationship that feels like a constant, draining storm. It could be a marriage, a family member, or a toxic friendship that leaves you feeling small and empty. It could be a devastating financial problem that never, ever ends, where every step forward is met with 2 steps back, keeping you in a state of constant stress. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a secret addiction, a habit shrouded in shame that has you trapped in a cycle you can't seem to break, making you feel like a hypocrite and a failure. These aren't the things we bring up over coffee after Sunday service, are they? We talk about our blessings, our victories, our praise reports. We put on this brave, spiritual face because we've absorbed this unspoken rule that true faith means being strong, and that ongoing weakness is a sign of a spiritual failure. We think if we just had enough faith, the thorn would be gone. My thorn was this persistent, exhausting weight. It was the first thing on my mind in the morning, and the last thing that haunted my thoughts as I tried to sleep. It tainted every conversation, whispering lies in my ear. It stole the joy from beautiful moments, a child's laugh, a stunning sunset, a celebration with friends, because it was always there, reminding me of my brokenness. It made me feel completely alone, even when I was in a room full of people I loved. It wasn't just a problem anymore. It had woven itself into the fabric of my identity. I wasn't a person who had a struggle. I was the one who struggled. In my desperation, I dug into my Bible, not for comfort, but for answers, for a formula. And that's where I found a kindred spirit in the most unlikely of places, the Apostle Paul. In 2 Corinthians, this giant of the faith, the man who wrote nearly half the New Testament, who had been taken up to the third heaven, admits his own profound weakness. He talks about his own thorn. He doesn't describe it delicately. He calls it a messenger of Satan, sent to torment him, to literally beat him up. For centuries, theologians and scholars have guessed what it was. Some think it was a physical sickness, like epilepsy or a painful eye disease. Others think it was a speech impediment that made his preaching difficult. Some believe it was relentless persecution and betrayal from those he tried to serve. But honestly, what the thorn was doesn't matter nearly as much as what it did. It kept Paul, this spiritual superhero, in a place of deep, painful awareness of his own human frailty. And I understood that completely. I felt the sting of my own thorn every single day, and it kept me feeling like I could never quite measure up, that I was fundamentally flawed in the eyes of God and everyone else. There's a point in any long fight where you feel like you just can't take one more step. You've used up all your own strength, all your own bright ideas, and all your carefully crafted plans. You've read the self-help books, you've tried the new routines, you've listened to the podcasts, and you are still stuck. That's exactly where I was. I was on my knees, completely and utterly bankrupt, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I pleaded with God. And I don't mean a polite, reverent, if it's your will kind of prayer. I'm talking about the ugly crying, the gut-wrenching, desperate screams of someone at the absolute end of their rope. It was the kind of prayer where you don't care who hears you, where your body aches from the force of your own sorrow. Paul says he pleaded with the Lord 3 times to take his thorn away. I felt like I had pleaded 3 times a day for 1,000 days. God, please, I would cry, just take it away. I can't do this anymore. I have nothing left. I've tried. I've served you. I've trusted you. I've given. Why won't you fix this? Why do you let this continue? Just make it stop. I started reminding God of his own promises, as if he had forgotten. I would quote scriptures about healing and freedom right back to him. I'd point to Mark 11:24, where Jesus said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." So I asked. I tried to muster up the belief. I knew he could do it. I never doubted his ability. The God who split the Red Sea, who healed the blind, who raised the dead, surely getting rid of this one little miserable thing in my life would be nothing for him. It would be effortless. But the answer was just silence, a hollow, echoing silence. The problem didn't go away. The pain didn't get better. In fact, some days it felt worse. And this cold, terrifying thought began to creep into the back of my mind, a thought I was too afraid to even speak out loud. Maybe he isn't listening. Maybe I'm not important enough. maybe he doesn't actually care. Maybe I'm on my own. It felt like my faith, which I had held onto so tightly, was slipping through my fingers like sand. I was at the bottom of a dark pit, looking up at what felt like a cold, empty sky. My greatest fear wasn't the thorn itself, but the thought that God had abandoned me to it. It was right there, in that pit of despair, in that place of utter spiritual exhaustion, and in that deafening silence, that the answer finally came. It wasn't a booming voice from heaven. There was no thunder, no lightning, no earthquake. It was a quiet, life-altering whisper to my soul. It was so subtle, I almost missed it, but so powerful, it rearranged my entire understanding of God. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the answer I desperately needed. And it came in the very same words God spoke to Paul all those centuries ago. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Let that sink in for a moment. Just let those words wash over you. I had begged God to take the weakness away. He answered by telling me that His power would be made perfect in it. I was desperately asking for a change in my circumstances, but He was offering me a source of strength to carry me through them. This wasn't a no. It was a complete and total redirection of my focus. God wasn't saying, "Tough luck, just deal with it." He was saying, "My grace, my unearned, undeserved, supernatural, divine power is enough for you, right here, right now, in this mess." The very thing I saw as my biggest failure, the source of my deepest shame, God saw as the perfect stage for His greatest strength. My weakness wasn't an obstacle blocking God's power. It was the very entry point for it. He didn't need me to get strong for Him to work. He was waiting for me to admit my weakness so He could meet me there with His strength. And suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. God wasn't withholding a solution from me. He was offering me something infinitely better. He was offering me Himself. The goal of faith was never to have a life empty of struggle, but to have a life full of His presence in the struggle. The thorn wasn't there to destroy me. It was there to keep me dependent on the only one who could sustain me. My weakness was the very thing that qualified me for His power. My empty hands were the only hands He could truly fill. That revelation changed everything. It was like a light flipping on in the darkest, most neglected room of my heart. For so long, I believed that being a strong Christian meant having it all together, never doubting, never failing, always projecting an image of victory. But God's economy, His way of thinking, is completely the opposite of ours. It's upside down. The Bible isn't a collection of stories about perfect people God decided to bless. It's a library of stories about God using weak, flawed, and broken people to do amazing things. Think about it. God chose Moses to lead a nation, a man who had a speech problem and was terrified of public speaking. He chose David to be king, a man who would go on to make catastrophic mistakes. He chose Peter, impulsive, hot-headed Peter to be the rock on which he would build his church, the very man who denied even knowing him at his lowest moment. God's pattern is to choose weakness and then fill it with his strength. I finally understood that God's grace isn't a one-time payment that you can use up. It's not a bank account that gets depleted. It's more like the manna he gave the Israelites in the desert. He gave them just enough for that day. They couldn't hoard it or save it for the next week. It would spoil. They were forced to trust every single morning that God would provide again. Grace is daily bread, not a one-time inheritance. It's moment-by-moment dependence. So how did this practically change my life? First, it radically changed how I prayed. Instead of my prayers being a constant list of demands, God, take this away, fix this, solve this, they became an invitation. I started praying, God, show me your power in this weakness. God, this hurts today, so be my strength in this pain. How do you want to use this struggle to show the people around me how great and sufficient you are? How can my story of not being enough point everyone to the truth that you are always more than enough? Second, it totally redefined what victory looked like for me. For years, I thought victory was the day my problem finally vanished. But with this new perspective, victory became every single moment I chose to lean on His grace, instead of collapsing under the weight of my weakness. Victory was choosing to be honest about my struggle with a trusted friend, instead of hiding in shame. Victory was choosing to get out of bed on a day when depression was screaming at me to stay hidden. Victory was responding with kindness when I felt irritated. Paul didn't just tolerate his weakness. He went a step further and said he would boast in it. That sounded insane to me at first. Why would anyone brag about their flaws? But I realized he wasn't boasting in the thorn itself. He was boasting in the God who was powerful enough to sustain him through it. It was a radical declaration of confidence in God's strength. It was saying to the world, I am not enough on my own, but let me tell you about the one who is. Look what God can do with someone this broken. Look how faithful He is to someone this weak. The thorn didn't magically disappear that day. Some days, the pain is still a reality, but its power over me did disappear. The pain was no longer the main character of my story. The grace that met me in the pain was. My struggle became a sacred space, an altar, a place where I felt God's power and presence more deeply, more intimately than I ever had when things were easy. My weakness wasn't a sign that God had abandoned me. It was the very place He showed up with His supernatural strength. Maybe you are right in the middle of your own battle today. You've been praying, fasting, and pleading with God to take away your thorn, and all you're hearing is a silence that feels like rejection. I want to encourage you with this profound truth. Your weakness does not disqualify you. In the kingdom of God, it is the one thing that qualifies you for an authentic experience of His power. Your struggle isn't proof that God has left you. It is an invitation to depend on Him in a way you never have before, to know Him more deeply. His grace is sufficient for you, for your chronic illness, for your anxiety, for your broken heart, for your financial fears, for your secret shame. His power is not just activated in spite of your weakness, it is made perfect in it. So please, do not be ashamed of your struggle. Do not hide your limits. Offer them to Him. Let your weakness become the very platform upon which He displays His incredible strength. Let your story become a testimony not to your own resilience, but to His unending faithfulness. He isn't waiting for you to be strong. He is waiting to be your strength. Let me say a quick prayer for you. Father, I lift up my friend who is listening to this right now. You see them right where they are. You see the one who feels weak, worn out, forgotten, and completely at the end of their rope. I pray that you would wrap your presence around them in a way that feels tangible, that cuts through the noise and the pain. For the one battling a chronic illness who woke up in pain again today, grieving the life they thought they would have, be their strength in the fatigue, be their hope in the uncertainty. Whisper to their heart that your grace is sufficient for this very day, for this very moment of pain. For the one suffocating under the weight of anxiety or depression, who fights a silent war every single day just to seem okay. Be the voice of truth that silences the lies of worthlessness. Be the light that breaks through the gray filter. Remind them that their battle does not define them, and that your power is made perfect in that place of mental and emotional struggle. For the one whose heart is broken by a relationship, who feels drained, small, and empty, be their comfort, their defender, and their peace. Heal the wounds that no one else can see, and show them their infinite value in your eyes. For the one crushed by financial fear, staring at bills they can't pay, feeling trapped and hopeless, be their provider. Give them the daily bread of your grace and help them to trust, moment by moment, that you are their security in the storm. For the one trapped in a secret addiction, shrouded in shame and feeling like a failure, I pray that you would break those chains. Remind them that your grace is bigger than their biggest mistake, that there is no pit so deep that your love can't reach deeper. Father, meet them right now in the silence, in the struggle, in the pain. Whisper to their heart the life-altering truth that your grace is more than enough. Help them to see that their weakness isn't a failure, but a profound, holy opportunity for your power to be revealed in and through their life. Carry them, Lord, sustain them, and let them find their true, unshakable strength, not in their own abilities, but in your unending, unfailing, and unconditional love and power. Amen. If this story hit home for you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message today. And I would genuinely love to read your stories in the comments. What's one moment, big or small, where you realized God's grace was enough for that day? Let's build a community of encouragement right here. Thank you for listening.